A tournament director in Toronto counted the tickets twice. He didn't believe the first number. 5,000 seats, sold, tied directly to one 21-year-old who wasn't even seated in the top 10. She lost that week. She still sold out the building. Stay with me. 2 days before Cincinnati, Alex Eala is sitting in a hotel room making a list that has nothing to do with tennis. Get a haircut, trim the nails, see if her friends are free in town. That's the whole plan for the biggest seed of her career. No war room. No highlight reel playing on a laptop. No team huddled around a whiteboard, breaking down an opponent's forehand. Just a girl trying to feel normal for 48 hours, before stepping back into a life where 10,000 strangers know the sound of her name before they've ever seen her hit a ball. She admitted it herself, almost sheepishly, like the smallness of the plan embarrassed her a little. A haircut. Some time with friends. Try to have fun. That was the preparation for history. The Lindner Family Tennis Center in Mason, Ohio doesn't usually sound like this. American hardcourt tennis, politely clapped, gently sponsored, forgettable by design, the kind of tournament that lives in the gap between the ones people actually remember. But today, the walkways are a wall of blue, white, and red. Flags, hundreds of them, held up by hands that drove for hours to get here. Shirts with her name stitched across the chest, some clearly homemade, some bought the moment they landed in Ohio. And a chant. 3 letters, over and over. Alex, 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 rolling through a stadium built for a different kind of silence, the polite kind, the golf clap kind. Days earlier, in Toronto, she had walked off a court having lost. Here, she hasn't picked up a racket yet, and they're already chanting like she's won. Something doesn't add up. Something is about to. Rewind to Toronto. 10,000 seats inside SoBi Stadium, filled with the same flags, the same chant, for a fourth-round match that was, on paper, just another early week of a tournament most casual fans forget by September. Families didn't treat it that way. They drove in from across Ohio. They flew from California. They came from New York on a Tuesday for a tennis match because for 1 hour, their community had a seat at a table it doesn't usually get invited to. Belinda Bencic, the woman who beat her that day, walked to the net afterward and said something no player says about the person they just beat. She thanked the crowd for cheering against her. Not out of politeness, out of something closer to awe. And Eala, when asked what all of this meant, didn't take the credit. She called herself a drop in the ocean. Everyone in that stadium, she said, was doing the same thing she was doing, representing where they came from, being proud of it out loud. In a country that doesn't always make room for that. This was never just a match. It was a room full of people finally getting to be loud about who they are. She just happened to be the reason they were all in the room at the same time. Even the sports gatekeepers took notice. Andy Roddick, a former world #1, a man who doesn't hand out praise like party favors, said it plainly. Everyone in tennis should be cheering for her, not for her ranking, for what walks through the gates when she plays. Hundreds of millions of potential fans, he said, and if that's what she brings, he's cheering for it. Because a sport this global has spent decades hunting for faces that could open doors this wide, and here was one, walking through it without even trying. Tennis has had cult followings before, players who packed stadiums on reputation alone. Rarely this young, though, rarely this early, rarely drawing crowds this size before cracking the top 15, and rarely for someone whose fans aren't just cheering for a win, they're cheering for a mirror. This is usually where stories like this fall apart under scrutiny, where the noise turns out louder than the substance underneath it. Not here. 17, that's her seed at the Cincinnati Open, the highest of her career at a WTA 1000 event. In a 96-player draw, only the top 32 seeds get a bye through round 1. She's one of them now. An extra day to rest a body running on fumes. An extra day to study whoever survives the opening round to meet her. One less landmine between her and the players she actually came here to test herself against. 3 weeks ago, she was ranked 20 in the world, a career high on its own. The kind of number that would have been a headline by itself in any other summer. Now she's inside the group tournaments build their entire draws around. The players other players quietly check the schedule for. From outside the top 30 to a top 17 seed, in the space of one summer, while half the tour was still learning to pronounce her name. Think about what that jump actually demands. Rankings don't move on emotion. They don't care about flags, chants, or ticket sales. They move on points, and points only come from beating people you're not supposed to beat, over and over, on courts in cities that have never been kind to you before. Every one of those 17 spots was taken, not given, from players with more experience, bigger sponsors, more comfort under exactly this kind of pressure. She didn't inherit this seed. She earned it, one match at a time, off players with no intention of handing it over. The summer itself was a crescendo with no flat ground in it. Washington first, the Mobadala DC Open, where she didn't just win her first WTA Tour title, she won it by beating Jessica Pegula, the world number 3 in the final, on a Sunday afternoon that turned a promising young player into a certified threat overnight. Barely time to exhale before Toronto, a 4th round at a WTA 1000, the deepest she's ever gone at that level. 8 matches in roughly 12 days. No rest between them, no easing in, no tune-up to shake off the rust. She was climbing a mountain at a sprint, and somewhere on the way up, the body started sending bills the schedule couldn't cover. Right at the peak of it, in Toronto, her ankle gave a warning. A scare. Nothing that stopped her outright, but enough to make everyone watching hold their breath for a second, because this is exactly how these stories tend to turn. A rocket ship interrupted by the one thing no amount of talent can out-hit. Here's what a setback like that actually costs a player at 21. Someone who spent most of her career outside the elite conversation and only just fought her way in. It isn't only physical. An ankle injury during the best stretch of tennis you've ever played is the cruelest kind of timing. There is the body forcing you to slow down at the exact moment the sport is finally speeding up to watch you. She didn't dramatize it. She didn't blame the schedule, the courts, the back-to-back travel between 2 countries in a single week. She simply said she was fine, that she'd rest, that she'd get a haircut, trim her nails, and come back out hot. No excuses offered, because none were needed. The loss in Toronto wasn't a collapse. It wasn't nerves. It wasn't someone getting inside her head. It was 2 brutal weeks catching up to one 21-year-old body all at once, the bill finally arriving after she'd spent every ounce of credit she had. Sit with that for a second. A career best run ended not by a better opponent on the day, but by the sheer weight of doing too much, too well, too fast, for too long, without a single day off. And here's the part that shouldn't make sense, but does. The loss didn't cost her the crowd. It grew it. A hero who loses and still gets chanted for on arrival 2 days later isn't being cheered for a scoreline. She's being cheered for who she is when the scoreline doesn't go her way, and that's a far harder thing to earn than a trophy. Toronto was supposed to be the setback, the part of the story where the wave breaks and recedes. Instead, it became proof that none of this was ever about winning alone. Cincinnati wasn't a fresh start after a bad week. It was the same wave, cresting higher, because the story underneath it never needed a trophy to keep growing. The flags didn't fold up and go home. They followed her. This is why it travels so far past a tennis scoreboard, past rankings, past seed numbers, into something closer to a shared inheritance, somewhere in the Philippines right now. A kid is watching a live stream at 3 in the morning because of the time difference, and doesn't care because for the first time in that kid's life, someone who looks like them, sounds like them, is standing across the net from the best players alive and not shrinking from it. In a living room in California, a mother who moved continents 30 years ago for a better life watches her daughter wear a stranger's name on her chest and understands completely why, on a lunch break in Ohio, someone is refreshing a live score, trying not to get caught checking their phone, because for 20 minutes a tennis match matters more than the job that pays the bills. This is what happens when representation stops being a talking point in a press conference and becomes something people can actually watch in real time on a Tuesday afternoon. It isn't abstract anymore. It's a scoreboard. This is the oldest feeling there is. Being counted out. Being the outsider in a room that supposedly belongs to everyone but somehow never quite includes you. Watching someone from your side of the map refuse to disappear, refuse to shrink, refuse to be a footnote in someone else's tournament. It doesn't matter what language you grew up speaking or what flag you'd wave given the chance. Everyone remembers what it felt like to be overlooked. And everyone remembers, forever, exactly who made them believe that didn't have to last. Here's the part worth saying out loud, though, because it's easy to lose in the flags and the chants and forget she's 21. This is not the ceiling. This is the floor. Cincinnati is a tune-up one more hard-court rep before the U.S. Open begins on August 30th, on a stage where she's already made history once, the first Filipina to win a Grand Slam main draw match on that very court. A deep run here doesn't just build confidence heading into New York. It sends a message. It tells Sabalenka, tells Rybakina, tells Witek, tells everyone in that locker room checking the draw sheet that a 17 seed isn't a courtesy handed out for popularity. It's a warning. Picture her 18 months from now, seated inside the top 10. No longer the story about the crowd in the stands, but the story about the trophy in her hands. Picture her walking into a Grand Slam quarterfinal as the favorite, not the feel-good underdog everyone's secretly rooting for. Picture the day the flags stop being a surprise and simply become what a home game looks like for her anywhere in the world, every single time. That version of her isn't a hope. Based on this summer alone, it's a timeline. And timelines like this have a habit of arriving early, because this isn't her first one. She was never supposed to win a junior Grand Slam without dropping a set at 17 years old. She did. She was never supposed to reach a Miami Open semifinal, beating 3 Grand Slam champions on the way. Not that young, not against that level of competition. She did. She was never supposed to become the first Filipina to win a Grand Slam main draw match at the U.S. Open, a sentence that simply didn't exist in tennis history until she wrote it. She did that too. Every time the sport quietly assumed there'd be a waiting period, a few more years of development before the big moments arrived, she skipped the line. So when someone says this isn't her ceiling, it isn't a hopeful guess. It's a pattern with her name on it, 3 times over. Strip away the flags. Strip away the chants, the seed number, the ranking. Here's what's actually true underneath all of it. A tournament director had to recount ticket sales because he didn't trust the first number. He should have trusted it. Because the thing that filled that stadium in Toronto and lined the walkways in Cincinnati was never really about one match, one trophy, one season. It was about a country finally having someone worth losing sleep over someone worth waking up at 3 in the morning for, worth driving 3,000 miles for, on a random Tuesday, for a first-round match that used to mean nothing to anyone outside the sport. She didn't ask to be a movement. She didn't campaign for it. She just kept winning long enough and kept showing up honest enough that nobody could look away. Tell me in the comments, where were you the first time you heard the name Alex Eala? Washington? Toronto? Right now? In a few years, when everyone knows this name, you'll want a record of when you knew first.